Hello Epic 7, and welcome to season number 9 of Ancient Inheritance and my guide on how to not be terrible at this event. Whether you're a veteran at Ancient Inheritance or brand spanking new, I'm hoping that this guide will serve as a solid dive into tips and tricks on how to succeed at this event. Before we dive in and see the what and how of Ancient Inheritance, let's talk about those sweet rewards. This season, we're being offered 3 different sets: a pen set, a torrent set, and for some reason a hit set. The stats on this gear looks pretty good. It's a little unfortunate that we do have some unwanted landmine stats rather than, crit damage on most of the pieces, but hey, that's the way it's always been. Torrent and pen set are amongst the hardest to farm for new players, so having access to these from an event that's really accessible at all levels of play is very nice, and something that should interest everybody in this game. Now, you may be saying to yourself, but Wulf, I don't have many units and my gear is pretty bad. There's no way I can perform in this event. Well, listen, that's not true. I can't emphasize this enough. This content is for everyone, and I mean everyone. Even you. Yeah, trust. You see, Ancient Inheritance employs many normalization mechanics. These special mechanics are so profound that it makes this event accessible to everybody. What I'm saying here is that this event is designed to allow the brand new player to perform on nearly equal footing with the 5-year veteran. Let me explain. First, there's an enlisting system. This system allows you to only draft a handful of units, 12 at the start. Now, you'll get additional unit slots as you level up, but the bottom line is you don't need a deep pool of units. You certainly don't need every unit in the game. Second, and this is the best part, once you enter Ancient Inheritance, every single unit you have is immediately upgraded. And I mean upgraded. Level 60, 6-star, max awaken, max mola, ready to go right out of the box like a fully upgraded hero. Even units that have had their specialty change completed will find their specialty change tree maxed out with all the runes. Now, unfortunately, once you leave Ancient Inheritance, it all reverts back to its prior form, but you can legit use a 5-star unit that you just pulled and have done nothing with, and it will perform exactly like a maxed out, fully invested unit. But what about gear? New players don't have great gear. Well, that's covered too. The next normalization mechanic is that gear stats don't really matter. Well, I mean they matter a little, but only a little. Like 10-to-1 ratio little. Look, what I'm trying to say is only about 10% of the stats that you see on your gear make it through inside of Ancient Inheritance. For example, let's say you've got speed boots with 40 speed as the main stat. Well, you're only going to see 4 speed reflected inside of Ancient Inheritance. That sick armor you just got with 20% crit chance, yeah, that's only about a 2% crit chance boost inside of AI. Gear substats are such a small impact that you could technically use unleveled gear and still succeed. Now, what does matter is gear sets. The full impact of gear set bonuses carry over, so you still get the same 12% boost benefit from that crit set. You still get that 25% speed boost from the speed set. You'll get the full benefit of that 45% bonus to attack if you wear an attack set. You'll also, of course, get the special set bonuses like lifesteal, counter, rage, pen, all of that. Set bonuses are massively important. So even if you're using some of the most dog water trash gear in the game, that's fine. Just make sure you cobble together the sets so you get those set bonuses. This way, you'll be able to jump right into the event and compete like a master. Oh, and on a side note, artifacts and exclusive equipment work the same way inside AI as they do outside. Full value, there's no normalization applied to artifacts. If your artifact's only level 27 outside, it's only going to be level 27 inside. Same with exclusive equipment. No normalization mechanics to those 2 things. Now, you will find that as you advance in Ancient Inheritance, a lot of your stats will cap out. At higher levels, there are some sets that have diminishing returns. Stats like crit chance, crit damage, effectiveness, effect resistance, they'll all cap out very early on. So set bonuses that impact those stats, they start to lose their value after a few days of farming in AI. but sets that always have tremendous value are sets that apply to uncapped stats like attack, health, defense, or sets that provide special bonuses like Rage, Torrent, Counter, Lifesteal. Ugh, Lifesteal is very important. Early on, remember that you can use artifacts like Midnight Bloom or imprints that boost crit chance in order to overcome your uncapped crit chance, but after you progress a few levels, you'll find that boosting crit chance artificially is no longer necessary, and you can swap to better artifacts for the job. Now, when you enter Ancient Inheritance, you'll start at a basic exploration level of 1. Now, you'll be able to increase this exploration level by using objects, fighting monsters, even just wandering around will increase your level. Yeah, your exploration level increases as you explore, and you'll be rewarded with more things. Daily provisions, the ability to enlist additional heroes, special bonuses like keys to open chests, even relics. But where do your stats come from? Well, that brings me to the final normalization mechanic of Ancient Inheritance, and this mechanic is the one that puts us all on equal footings. You see, we all enter Ancient Inheritance with the exact same stats on our units, with a little bit of a nudge from your gear, but the bulk of your stats comes from the elemental leveling system. You see, in Ancient Inheritance, you don't level units, you level elements. As you level an element, every hero you own of that element will have their stats increased when you use them inside of Ancient Inheritance. To level your elements, you need to fight monsters with the elemental symbol weak to the element you're trying to level. For example, let's say you want to level your fire units, you need to find and fight monsters that have the earth elemental symbol. If you decide to level light units, you need to go beat up monsters that are wearing the dark elemental symbol, and so on. Now, this is important because as you climb to higher floors in Ancient Inheritance, the monsters become more difficult to fight. So make sure you don't advance to floors 2 or 3 until you've reached a significant enough level to be able to handle the monsters on floors 2 and 3. The last thing you want to do is be in a situation where the monsters are too strong for you to be able to fight. And also your guild doesn't want to be in the situation where there's not enough monsters on that floor to level everybody in the guild. So take your time. Make sure you do enough normal monster fights to sufficiently level your units before you advance to the next floors. Now, for red, green, and blue fighters, not for light and dark, only for red, green, and blue, there will be an additional system this time where you'll be able to trade in provisions in order to artificially boost your levels, like to an unlimited level. This will be nice for people who run out of monsters to fight to level their units, or people who started late and need to catch up. But this system will only be in place for floors 2 and 3. It's just a nice catch-up mechanic so you don't get caught unable to do fights. It's important, however, to be specialized in just 1 or 2 elements, tops. There are not enough fights to go around for everybody to level all of their elements. And also, you don't get to take enough units into this event anyway for there to be viable to play all of the elements. So all you would be doing is taking opportunities from the rest of your guild to level their units by fighting all the monsters. Focus on one primary element and maybe a secondary backup supporting element. This way, you'll be able to level faster, kill monsters easier, and advance your guild quicker. Now, let's talk about what's required to participate in Ancient Inheritance. First, you need to be at least level 40, which you probably already are by the time you join a guild. And your guild needs to have at least 16 members who are level 40 to initiate Ancient Inheritance. Now, don't worry if you start Ancient Inheritance and people drop out of your guild and you drop below 16, you're fine. Once you're in, you're in. However, you really want to be in a guild that's very active, like a lot of very active members. Because you see, at its core, Ancient Inheritance is guild-based PvE. Your advancement in this event is tied to your guildmates, and theirs is tied to you. So you really want to be a part of a guild with a lot of active members. This will really min-max your Ancient Inheritance experience as well as your entire Epic 7 experience. So if you're in a guild that's falling short of expectations, hit me up. Though space is limited, I do have several guilds that are recruiting from early game to top-end guilds across all levels of gameplay in almost every server. So if you need help finding a new home, click that link in the description, jump in my Discord, and check out the Guild Recruitment Hall. That way you can get in touch with one of our many recruiters to help you find a good solid place for this event. Okay, so now that I've covered joining a guild, and I hope I've really driven home that this event is for everyone, let's talk about how to prepare. We're going to talk about how to prepare by going over the 3 things that matter above all else in Ancient Inheritance: gear sets, elements, and artifacts. First, let's talk about gear sets. As we covered earlier, although gear stats don't really matter that much in AI, the gear set bonuses certainly do. Now, because elemental leveling ramps up your skills so fast, you'll probably find that by level 5 or 6, you don't need any more boosts to crit chance, crit damage, effectiveness, or effect resistance. Those stats will all cap out pretty quickly. If you can, try to avoid using destruction set, hit set, crit set, effect res, those sets. These highlighted sets are the really good sets to focus on for Ancient Inheritance. The top of the list, of course, is Attack Set and Rage Set for insane damage. Attack has no functional limit, and Rage will help you with damage because almost every single fight, the mobs will have a debuff on them. Rage Set is money in this if you have it. But Lifesteal is especially good. Lifesteal will allow you to be self-sustaining, and that's very important with the combat-centric nature of Ancient Inheritance. You see, you've got to fight normal mobs to level your units, and there are some mobs where just a lifesteal unit alone might be able to handle it. In an ideal situation, you want to do 1 to 2 unit clears of most of your fights. To that end, look for units who can apply defense break like Ken to make the fights go faster, and then look for units that naturally self-heal, like Fire Ravi, for example, or APOC Ravi. Units that cleanse, like Mediator Queric, are especially good. Look for units who use dual attack, like Camilla and Kitty Clarissa. That will really help you with your 2-man teams. And look for units who not only heal, but also CR manipulate, like Amelia, Destina, Green Lots. But most of all, remember to stick with 1 or 2 elements tops. More than that, and there's simply not enough volume of monsters around to level your whole guild, and trying to nurse 3 or more elements up at once, you're going to level slowly. Now, this season has added a new object called the Spirit Sanctum. I mentioned this before. This object will only be on levels 2 and 3, but in the Spirit Sanctum, you'll be able to use your provisions to level your red, green, and blue elements only. Light and Dark cannot use the Spirit Sanctum. So, guild organizers, take note of this. Make sure not everyone is going Light and Dark as their secondary element, or you may find that you don't have enough monsters to satisfy the guild's needs for the people that are primary building Light and Dark. Once you pick your elements, try to wrap your brain around coming up with teams of 1 and 2 unit fighters. Make the monster fighting really efficient. Remember, self-sustaining units are huge for this. Now let's take just a moment to talk about artifacts and exclusive equipment. You will get the full stat and effect bonus of exclusive equipment and artifacts. There is no normalization process for that at all. In early levels, it's really good to have artifacts that boost crit chance, like Midnight Bloom, Black Hand of the Goddess, Azure Comet, things like that. The same can be said for artifacts that boost effectiveness in cases where debuffs are needed, but once you level up, you'll find that these artifacts aren't needed anymore because your stats are pretty much capped out. At that point in time, you want to swap to more suitable artifacts. I know, swapping artifacts around can be a little bit expensive, but I think you'll find it's worth your while to move artifacts around, especially right before important fights. I mean, do you want those sweet rewards or not? Now, let's take a minute to talk about the elemental enhancement system inside of AI. As we discussed before, you gain experience towards the element that is strong to the element represented on the symbol over the monster before the fight. I know that's a lot, but look, it's really simple if you break it down. If you see a monster tagged as fire and you fight it, you're going to boost your water units. If you see a monster tagged as dark and you fight it, you're going to boost your light units. So whatever element that monster is tagged with, you're going to boost the element that's strong to that element. This is the reason you want to limit yourself to just 1 or 2 elements. First and foremost, you don't want to be a jack of all trades, master of none. If you spread all of your stuff out equally, you will level so slowly that your guild will leave you in the dust and advance to higher floors, leaving you behind. Second, there are only so many fights to go around. Sharing resources is a part of guild coordination, so make sure you share the monsters because they're the resource for leveling. As to what element to pick, look, everybody needs to make their own decision when it comes to elements, but my advice is for the guild leaders to make sure you have good coverage. Red, green, blue specialists will be needed to rapidly slay the wardens, kill mini-bosses, and clear blockages on paths to get to different areas of the map. Light and dark specialists will be needed to kill the prongos and advance the floors. Each element has a solid roster of units to pick from and can be backed up by a second element that supports the units you're enlisting. Ideally, guilds want to have a spread, something on the order of 4 to 6 fighters specializing in each red, green, blue element, and 5 to 7 fighters specializing in both light and dark. So let people choose their own secondary element, of course, because they're going to be doing that based on the units they want to enlist and have. However, make sure that light and dark as a secondary element is limited to no more than half of the guild, or you'll likely run out of light and dark monsters to level pretty quickly. A good way to avoid running out of monsters is to make sure that everyone, ideally, is level 4 to 5 before they advance to floor number 2, and ideally level 7 to 8 before they advance to floor 3, in their primary element. One level lower than that's okay, but more than that, I think you'll find advancement is difficult and fights are hard to do unless you use the Spirit Sanctum. Now, as we discussed, the way you level elements is doing fights. You want to be frugal on how you do your fights. Once you fight a monster and win, you can't use those units for the rest of the day. They're grayed out. Kind of like when a unit dies in Guild Wars and it's grayed out for the next fight. So pick units who can solo or two-man normal monster fights. Units with built-in healing like Ravi, or units on lifesteal set. Those are magic for power leveling up your fighters. Also consider two-man combos where you run a DPS with a healer like Luna plus Angelic Montmorency. This will let you do more fights with fewer units. Also note that there is no real penalty for failure versus normal monster fights. That is, if you attack a monster and you fail or die, you only lose 1 provision. Your units will still be available, you can do the fight again, so if you aren't sure, just try it. If you fail, you only lost 1 provision, throw Soul Weaver on the team and hit it again, finish it off. Remember, this is only for normal monster fights. If you lose or fail versus a mini-boss or a warden or a floor boss, then you lose those units for the day. Now, you see these monsters and how they have hearts over their head? That's how many times they can be defeated before disappearing for the entire guild. So, after the 3rd kill, this little guy will vanish. This is why guild leaders should divide the guild up into elements. So you don't want to have everyone running the same elements and then they just overfarm the monsters and there's just not enough monsters to go around and nobody's able to get really strong and it stops your progress. Now that we've covered how to build, let's talk about how to clear. On each floor, you'll need to make Prongo show himself. This is done by murdering Prongo's friends. Not only does this level you, but it also increases his rage counter as seen in the upper right hand corner of the screen. Once you max out the rage counter, you'll make him so angry that he'll appear. Now, assuming it's the same as last season, the first time Prongo appears, he will be the light version, meaning the people who chose to build their dark elemental heroes should head straight over there and kill him. In the meantime, all of the people that built red, green, and blue, they should start making their way over to where the wardens will spawn. Remember to go to the warden you're strong against. Red fighters go to the green warden, blue fighters go to the red warden, and so on. Once the dark fighters have eliminated Prongo, he runs and hides and the wardens appear. Now if you're organized, you'll have a brute squad right there ready and waiting to mug the warden. While all this is going on, the light fighters are moving over to where the dark Prongo will appear for the final fight. Once all 3 wardens are dead, the dark Prongo will appear and the light fighters will slaughter him. This will drop the special gear and open the portal to the next floor. Lather, rinse, repeat. This is how all 3 floors will work. I do recommend that latecomers or people who missed the chance to fight their chosen elements fight spend their time on floor 1 getting guild chests, killing mini bosses, opening up paths to help people proceed. and making sure they do enough normal fights that they're sufficiently leveled so they'll be ready on floor number 2. Another huge tip is that on day 1, when Ancient Inheritance drops, make sure the first thing you do that day, like the very first thing, before you brush your teeth, log into the game and get on the map. I'm not even kidding. Make this the first thing you do. Even if you don't have time to play Epic 7, just enter the dungeon and have your unit appear on the map, select your starting relic, then you can exit the game and do whatever it is you need to do for the rest of the day. The reason for this is that while the rest of the guild collects rewards, only the people who are on the map get those rewards. God forbid your guild is hyper aggressive and they kill the floor boss before you've even logged into Ancient Inheritance, you won't get that first piece of gear. If your guild opens a guild chest, you won't get the loot from that either, unless you are on the map. So, especially if your guild is active, you want to make sure you're on the map as soon as possible so that any rewards collected while you're AFK, you will get those. Now, you can even be on a different floor. If your guild gets rewards on floor 2 and you're still on floor 1, that's fine. You still get the rewards. As long as you're anywhere inside of Ancient Inheritance, you will get any group loot that is collected. So, you don't want to miss anything, right? Make sure to get on the map first thing. As for the starting relic, this is a decision that will impact your entire Ancient Inheritance event. Each relic has unique uses. Some of them, like the spyglass, look terrible, but they have insane synergy with other relics in the game that you can collect later. The synergy and diversity of the relics now is crazy, and honestly, I will probably do a separate video just on the relics and their synergy and a tier list of relic sets you should get. I will say this. Avoid any relic that lets you do an additional heart of damage to monsters if you are building light or dark elements, especially if you're in a larger guild. These can be nice for breaking down monsters who are blocking the path, but you are robbing other guildmates of potential experience. Other than that, don't fret your starting relic too much, because unlike past seasons, you can totally replace your starting relic with a new one found while adventuring, and that's really nice. Now, as to movement, remember, provisions are unforgiving. There is no undo button, so go slow. Count the number of hexes. Take your time to make sure you have the provisions needed to get the job done. To help you plan your best course of action, the brilliant minds of the Bread team will be making maps once again. I joined Bread many seasons ago to help him with the map making, and since then the team has expanded to include a small but very hard-working group of map makers who scrape data off of the Asian guilds, because they're a day ahead of us, to make maps, and these maps will help you identify the best pathing to get to elemental fights, show you the location of where wardens and the boss will spawn, show you where loot can be found. These maps will always be posted in the description of my videos as well as in my Discord. Feel free to copy them for your own use them to help organize your guild, or even just for your personal movements and experience. Now for treasure chests. Gone are the days of loot goblins. No more loot goblins obsessing on chests. Loot goblins who can't think about anything but chests. Loot goblins who are so focused on chests that they don't help the guild. You can no longer just loot chests and buy from the shop without helping your guild. Treasure chests now require keys to open them, and the only way to get keys is as a drop from doing fights or as a perk from leveling. So, you need to be active, an active, contributing member of Ancient Inheritance to get the keys, to get that personal loot so that you can buy the stuff in the shop, and the stuff in the shop is very worth getting. The loot on floor 1 is pretty mediocre, but don't worry too much about saving keys. You will get plenty to open all of the chests you need to buy out the shops. Real quick, I'll go over some of the special objects found in Ancient Inheritance. First are these barricades. These block paths and just take provisions to break. They work like monsters blocking paths. The difference is when you kill a monster, it not only takes provision, but it gives you back experience, but it also takes units to do. Barricades take the provisions, but they give no experience. But they also don't take any units away. So use strategy here. Don't waste provisions breaking down a barrier when others can just fight the monsters that give you access to the same location while leveling themselves up. There are certain situations where going through a barricade may be more efficient. There are these backpacks that give exploration experience to level you up. These are unlimited use for your guild, and they're far more important on earlier floors than on later floors. Then there are these tombstones that give substantially more exploration experience than backpacks, but they have a limited number of use per guilds, so before you wander over to one, make sure it's still active. Then there are these tents that restore provisions, and statues that bring units back to life who had died in a fight earlier in the day. There are these banners that buff monsters, making them harder to fight than they appear, so beware of a monster with smoke swirling around them as they're under the buff effect of the banner. Whether or not we're able to interact with these banners this season or not is still unknown. There's also these lighthouses that, once you use them, will illuminate a portion of the map. It's nice for the people with the spyglass and the teleport relics to be able to move around, but with the advanced maps we'll be giving you, their importance is a little bit less. And finally, there are relic shrines where you can acquire new relics or replace the unwanted ones. Make sure you check to see if you have room for a new relic, or that you have a relic that you totally want to replace before using a relic shrine. Once you use it, it's activated and spent, and you can't come back to it later. My last little bit of advice for you is that you are permitted to withdraw heroes up to 10 times per season. Season, not day, not week, per season. If you picked a unit to use an AI and it's just not what you've needed, or you find that your guild has not enough of a certain element and you want to change to a different element, you can withdraw and replace your units. This is great, but remember, 10 units per season. After that, your roster is locked. Also, no withdrawing a dead hero and then re-enlisting it. That will not bring it back to life. Even if you re-enlist a dupe, you can't cheat the system that way. Sorry. Well, now that I've talked your ear off and turned what I intended to be a short video into a pretty long one, I'm going to wrap things up for this introduction video. I do plan to stream my daily AI pushes live on Twitch at 8 AM Eastern Time, so make sure that you click that link in the description of the video and follow me on Twitch so you can come be a part of the adventure. Get organized, make a Discord chat room, turn it into a party. It's not safe to go alone. This adventure is way more fun with friends. Have a good one, Epic 7.